Hello, welcome back to the show. Today I want to share some thoughts on work ethic. Yeah, work ethic. I've been in business for about 28 years or so, and if there's one constant in business, I don't care really what business you're in, it's the challenge of finding people with work ethic that will do what needs to be done no matter how long it takes or no matter what amount of pain that they need to go through in order to get it done. I'm a big reader, and in one issue of Inc. magazine, it shared 3 stories of 3 sports people that you may have heard of. The first story is about Kobe Bryant, the basketball player. The article says, Kobe's professional trainer was fast asleep. Could you blame him? It was 3:30 in the morning, and all of a sudden his phone started ringing. It's Kobe. He must be in trouble, or in some kind of an emergency, the story says. His trainer's freaking out and nervously picked up that phone. Kobe says that he's doing some conditioning work and he could use his trainer's help. Now, mind you, it's 3:30 in the morning. The trainer then proceeds to get ready and head over to the gym. He arrives about 4:30 a.m., and what did he see? He saw Kobe by himself practicing, drenched in sweat. It looked like he had just jumped into a pool. It wasn't even 5 in the morning yet. That's what champions do. Champions have work ethic. That is a good work ethic. Wayne Gretzky, the hockey player, the story says, when Wayne Gretzky was a kid, he watched hockey like most players his age. What separated him was the way he watched each game. Whenever he would tune in, he would bring a pencil and a paper, and as the game progressed, he would trace the movement of the puck on the paper. So obsessed with learning how the puck moved, he wouldn't even look down. For hours, he studied every movement the puck would make. Years later, sports commentators time and time again have said how no player has ever been able to have a feel for the puck like Gretzky. In fact, I'll say the quote wrong, but he said one time something to the effect that he needed to watch, or he had to go where the puck was going to be, hence why he was so good in his craft and his sport. The final story by Inc. magazine is about basketball player Michael Jordan. It says, Michael Jordan was known for practicing ridiculous hours every day. Eventually, this started to rub off on his teammates, making the Bulls one of the best NBA teams in history when Jordan was the leader. Before regular practice started, Jordan would practice at his house. Over time, Scottie Pippen decided to join him. Pretty soon, most of the team followed suit. Through sheer work ethic and determination, Jordan recruited his entire team to work harder. The accomplishments of that team speak for itself. Today, I want to share some thoughts with you on the subject of work ethic. There's quite a bit in the Bible that talks about work ethic in various forms. In the book of Proverbs is a very poetic book in many ways, but it talks about work ethic. In chapter 6 of Proverbs, one translation of the text says, "Go to the ant, you sluggard," S-L-U-G-G-A-R-D, "observe her ways and be wise, which having no chief or no officer or ruler, prepares her food in the summer and gathers her provisions in the harvest. How long will you lie down, O sluggard? When will you arise from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and your poverty will come in like the vagabond," it says, "and your need will be like an armed man." Listen to the words. There's another, like a more modern paraphrase of this text. It says this: "Take a lesson from the ants, you lazy fellow. Learn from their ways and be wise. For though they have no king to make them work, yet they labor hard all summer, gathering food for the winter. But you, all you do is sleep. When will you wake up from your sleep? A little longer, maybe? Sure, just a little more. And as you sleep, poverty creeps upon you like a robber and destroys you and wants to attack you in full armor." We're talking today about how important it is to have work ethic even though you don't feel like it. I've written about this on my blog. I have a weekly blog or an email that goes out to several thousand people around the world. And lately I've been talking about work ethic, how important having a good work ethic really is. Thomas Edison said one time, "Many of life's failures are people who do not realize how close they were to success when they gave up." I have some sales reps in our insurance agency, and sometimes sometimes I know that people give up just prior to creating something wonderful. And then somebody that comes behind them finalizes it, and they get all the rewards because the person before them gave up ahead of time. Have you ever had maybe situations in your life when you just felt like giving up and throwing in the towel and said, you know what, it's not worth it. I'm not going to push another time because I've been pushing for so many years. There's so many stories in the Bible about people who push through the difficult times, and then there are stories about people who gave up before it was time to break through. One author says, not religiously based, but one author says, character consists of what you do on the third or fourth tries. James Michener said that. Again, character consists of what you do on the third and fourth tries. I've told so many people that most days I do not like going to the gym. I was allergic to exercise as a young person, even into my 30s. You talk about exercise, it's the last thing I wanted to do. I don't want to sweat. I don't want to put myself through agony to exercise. Until one day, I got chased by a bunch of bees, some yellow jackets, and they won the race. I got stung all over the place. So that day, 8 or 9 years ago, I decided that was not going to happen again. But yet there are some days when you just don't feel like doing what you need to do. Somebody said, Ernest, I can't even pronounce his last name, so I'll spell it for you. A gentleman named Ernest Yeboah, Yeboah, said this. I want to share this a few times in the show today. He said, quote, "If God gives you a seed, he expects you to plant it. If he plants it for you, he expects you to water it. If he waters it for you, he expects you to prune it. And if he prunes it and keeps it for you, he expects you to harvest it. If he stores it for you, he expects you to keep it safe from getting rotten. And if he keeps it from getting rotten for you, he expects you to account for the seed. Yes," he says, "life is about purposely fulfilling a purpose. We are expected to be doing something at each moment in our life, and we live without purposefully living." I'll bet you know people that do not live on purpose. In fact, I would suggest that the majority of people in your life live by default. Yeah, live by default. That is, they let things happen instead of making things happen. We see that so many people want to take the easy way. I know you've done it, and I know I've done it, that I've wanted to take the easy way so many times and avoid the difficult times, the stressful times, the times when, I just don't feel like it today. I think both of us, you and I both, have a tendency to base our decisions on what we feel like at the moment. Someone said, "The few among the many believe that there is another way to get stuff done." Somebody, I think it was Bill Gates, is attributed to this story, that he says, if you want something done, find a lazy person to do it because they'll find an easier way to get it done. It got me thinking. Again, if you want something done, give that project to a lazy person and they'll find the easiest way to get it done. I don't know if that holds water, in every situation, but it certainly got me thinking considerably. Time after time when I read in the Bible that the people who got stuff done, they typically use something. They use stuff. They use an item or a belief system, or they partner with an individual to get things done. Over in Exodus chapter 4 in the Old Testament, it talks about Moses. And it says in this piece of this text, starting in verse 1 in Exodus chapter 4, it says, "Then Moses said, 'What if they will not believe me or listen to what I say? Let me give you the backstory. Moses was challenged to do some extraordinary things that he didn't feel like he was qualified to do. He couldn't speak properly. He didn't have any really formal training in what he was tasked to do, but he was kind of arguing with God in this storyline. So again, verse 2. So he says, what if they say that, God has not appeared to you? So it says, the Lord said to him, what is in your hand? What is in your hand? He said, a staff, a big stick. Then he said, throw it on the ground. So he threw it on the ground, and it became a snake. And Moses fled from it. He ran away, scared. But the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand and grasp it by the tail. So he stretched out his hand and caught it, and it became a staff, a big stick again. So in verse 5, it says that they may believe in God. So he used this tool, this example, to show Moses that maybe that God had something bigger and better planned for him if he would just believe. So the story continues in verse 6. It says, then God said, now put your hand into your shirt. And he put his hand into his shirt, and he took it out, and his hand became leprous. It was like leprosy he had. So in verse 7, God told Moses to put your hand back in your shirt, and he put his hand back into his shirt, and he came out, and his hand was clean, just like a brand new baby. So again, he was trying to give Moses some encouragement through some very extraordinary examples that in fact he could do what he was called to do or asked to do. So this interaction in time changed the entire planet, because some of the major religions now believe that Moses is a prophet or was a prophet, and we're still talking about him some 4,000 years later. So time after time, things that get done are done with something, meaning that you and I can leverage not only people, but items and images and or books and or words to get us through certain things, not always, but certain things, to maybe do some extraordinary things that we hadn't considered that we could in fact do. So today I want to ask you several times, what's in your hand? Well, you don't think that you have anything in your hand, but if you start making a list of the items that are around you that you can leverage for the sake of other people, I think you're going to find that you have more than you thought you had. There's so many stories in the Bible. There's a story about a woman named Hannah, and she didn't think that she had anything to offer to do some extraordinary things. But I'm not going to get into the long story of it. But she leveraged something very precious to her that eventually turned into a situation where that item, that person that she leveraged, changed a society, at least for a period of time. Another woman in the Bible named Ruth. She placed herself in a situation where some hundreds of years later, her act of sacrifice, her leveraging an item, or in this example, a relationship, eventually changed the entire culture of the world, in the Mideast specifically. Then there's a story in the New Testament about a boy, a little boy. Jesus was out teaching, and so many, like 5,000 people followed him out into the wilderness, and they didn't think about packing a lunch, and they're out all day, all evening, and people started getting hungry. So one of Jesus' students, Philip, he came to him, and he's like, teacher, the people are getting hungry. We're miles and miles away from their homes. What do we do? So Philip was questioning Jesus, and Jesus kind of was quizzing him. It's like, what are our options? But Philip was saying, there's not even enough money to feed all these people. So Jesus said, well, what do you have? So they did an inventory of what they had at the scene. And there was this little boy that had just a couple pieces of fish and a few loaves of chunks of bread. And then Philip's like, but what's that to so many? So the story says that Jesus prayed over these items, the fish and the food, and then Jesus said, well, start handing this out to all these people. Well, wait a minute. If it's only a couple pieces of fish and a couple loaves of bread, what's that to so many people, the story says. So as they started to hand out the items, the food, the fish and the bread, it multiplied in the buckets, meaning that what they leveraged didn't go away. It didn't end. So they were able to feed more than 5,000 people because they leveraged just a couple things. And I think there's a bigger picture there for both of us, that maybe there's some things in our lives, maybe there's some relationships in our lives, maybe there's some difficulties in our lives even, maybe there's some books in our lives, some writings, some relationships in our lives that can be leveraged to do some things that we never really thought could be leveraged in any way, shape, or form. You know, Moses had to see past his own struggles, and that, I don't know about you, but that's pretty hard for me. Maybe you don't have any struggles. I could be talking to the wrong person here today, but I have a lot of struggles, and I would assume that you have at least one, maybe two, that maybe that struggle or those struggles seem to be in your face all the time, and maybe you think that you can't get through the struggles because they seem to be so big. Well, maybe that should not be. Maybe that intimidation factor that you're going through shouldn't be. You should maybe leverage that difficulty, maybe leverage the situations and the knowledge of other people's knowledge, other people's experiences for the benefit of not only you, but other people in your life as well. I go back to what Ernest Yaboa said. He said, if God gives you a seed, he expects you to plant it. If he plants it for you, he expects you to water it. If he waters it for you, he expects you to prune it. If he prunes it and keeps it for you, he expects you to harvest it. If he harvests it for you, he expects you to store it. If he stores it for you, he expects you to keep it safe from getting rotten. And if he keeps it from getting rotten for you, then he expects you to maybe account for the seed. Yes, life is all about purposely fulfilling a purpose. You are expected to be doing something at each moment in your life, or we live without purposefully living. And I can't speak for you, but I would say that the majority of people that you know are not living on purpose, meaning that there's an ultimate goal in their life of doing something that's different, or at least something that will stand out among decades after they're long gone. When your struggle becomes really who you are, then your foot's really locked on the brake. I'll be as transparent as I can comfortably be here today, but for a couple of decades, the speech impediment that I've had for my entire life, that was and is at times a roadblock, and a huge embarrassment. You just don't know how much of an embarrassment it is to this day when I can't speak properly, or I fumble over the words, or I stutter on the words or something. It's just hugely embarrassing. So it's always right there in my face. You see, you idiot, you can't even talk right. I mean, that's what I tell myself most days. But am I going to allow the challenge to keep me from doing what I think I need to do for the benefit of other people, whether or not anybody's helped or not? My passion, my goal is to serve. And I wonder if you have maybe not necessarily the same struggle, but a struggle of some kind that is in your face all the time, that you keep looking at and you think that you can't get past that struggle because, in fact, it is in your face all the time. You know, we ride the brake of life when we're unsure. I know you've done it and I've done it. You know, we don't hit the accelerator, or we have one foot on the gas. I know you've seen it on the road. One person, their foot on the gas and the brake at the same time. So they're going, but yet they keep their foot on the brake. So the brake lights are on all the time. So they're not really maximizing their acceleration because they have their foot on the brake. And I wonder if you and I know I have. I wonder if you have done the same thing. You know, it looks like you're moving forward, but you're holding yourself back because your foot's on the brake at some point, maybe multiple times a day. I don't know. So when you ride your brake in a real car, it's going to reduce the amount of time that you have to have brakes, meaning it's going to wear your brakes out pretty quickly. And I wonder if that is the same thing. I don't know. Maybe it's the same thing with you and I in life, that when we ride our brake too often, then we're really not maximizing the journey and the vehicle and the life that we have left and the amount of years that we have left. So I think more times than not, you and I have to play mind games with ourselves. Yeah, it's a little crazy to even sound like that, but I really believe that, in fact, I know for a fact, that there are people who have made it big time in life that have had to play mind games with themselves in order to get through the stressful times in their lives. And I'm not saying that it always works, because obviously it does not always work. But I know sometimes it works, so that you have to place people and situations and images and stories and other things in your life in order to get through some of the most challenging times in your life. We can learn a great deal from people who've been there and done that, but we're not going to learn it if we don't read about them. And that's one of the big things in society now, is that most people don't want to read. I mean, this is crazy real, that you give a person a book and they throw it in the back of the car. When in that book could be, for whatever the book cost, it could be a life-changing sentence or a paragraph or a story or a chapter that can change their life, but they refuse to read the material. So then they go through life, 30, 40 years going through life, and they realize that, you know what, they're not getting anywhere fast, and then they die without even living. I think that's so common with a lot of people. Ralph Waldo Emerson said that shallow men believe in luck or in circumstances, but strong men believe in cause and effect. Think about that a minute. Strong people believe in cause and effect, because as I had a guest on another show that I do, he talked about the law of cause and effect, because many times, not always, but I'd say more than half the time, that what happens to you and I is a result of something that originated. It had to start somewhere, right? It had to start at some point in the past. So again, I read what Ralph Waldo Emerson said. He says, shallow men believe in luck or circumstances, but strong men believe in cause and effect. And I believe that if you and I go back to some of what the causes have been in our own lives, that we can see that maybe if we can maybe rewire the cause, or better yet, reframe the cause, maybe, lessen the impact of the cause, that our lives could be changed in a way that maybe we hadn't even thought about. And then you run into a situation when you really want to look at work ethic here. That's our theme today. Is something called serendipity. Serendipity, by definition of it, is things that happen that were not planned, that over time you look at it and those things seem to be designed by something or someone smarter than us. That's my weak definition of what serendipity means. And I think if you look around in your own life, you're going to find people that have been brought into your life by maybe happenstance, by maybe, this certainly was not planned. Maybe these things that you didn't think that you were going to ever meet this person or be in the same zip code as this person, or maybe in the same building. You get the point I'm trying to make, that sometimes you really think that maybe this has been ordained by some higher power. That's what I'm talking about here today. Talking about having a work ethic because of a variety of reasons, but also including serendipity. I've met certain people by accident. And as a result of that interaction and that meeting, that relationship grew into something that would not have ever happened if it wasn't a result of the meeting. Let me give you another example. I had lunch with a friend of mine named Paul, probably more than a year ago. Paul and I were having lunch, and I was kind of whining to him that I was trying to find other ways to reach more people, to just encourage him, just to give him a little push forward, to inspire them in some way. Maybe it's a sentence or a phrase. And he says, why don't you go on TV? It's like, dude, I can't even talk right. I stutter. I mean, I'm not qualified to be in front of people like this. I mean, Paul, you're way better than I am. Way, far smarter than me. He says, I think you need to check out the studio, which is where I am here today. I says, man, I don't know. So just to check it out, so long story short, I came by and talked to the folks, and they're very generous with their time. And they molded our ideas and reshaped our ideas, and now we're broadcasting in 1.4 million homes every week. Yeah, 1.4 million homes because of a serendipitous conversation at an Italian restaurant that Paul likes to go to. And he just brought it up. Thank goodness for the conversation. Thank goodness for us arranging that lunch that day. Thank goodness for the people here at Carroll Media Center in Westminster, Maryland, that have been so kind with their time and their diligence in teaching this knucklehead here how to do technology and be on TV for the benefit of other folks. The point is that if you don't maximize the opportunities around you, that is the interactions, the conversations, and learn from those things, learn from other people, then you could potentially be walking past opportunities that would not have existed if you didn't pay attention to the events that led up to those events, if that makes any sense. So I'm asking you today to consider your own work ethic. I'm asking you to read up on the people that have become extraordinary over time, that these people did not fall to the top. Very, very few people fall to the top. Look at your own work ethic. Look at it in the mirror with real glasses on to say, I could be better. If I did so much more, if I worked harder, if I worked smarter, then my results would be the same or similar to the people who've been there and done that and have made it big time. You're no different than them. You're no smarter than them. You're no better than them. They're not better than you. Mirror some of the things I've shared here today, and I think you're going to find that your work ethic will evolve, and when it does evolve, then the situations in your own life can change in such a dramatic, positive way that it's going to blow your mind. My name is John Carver, and I really appreciate you watching the show. Thanks so much.